Uh-oh.
We're back on the Vic Johnson build here. Once again, sponsored by Three Monkeys Solderless, home of the world's best audio cables for your pedal board and for your car audio and home audio. So check us out, threemonkeyssolderless.com. All right, so where did we leave off? We're going to start wiring the potentiometers a little bit, maybe do some of the input jacks, and then it's time to drop the board in and button it up, right? Get it going. All right, so let's begin. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do these grounds for these pots. All right, so the way I like to do is I'll grab my little pliers here, and we got the bass, middle, treble, volume, volume. So on the middle pot here, we have this one is to be grounded, so I'll bend that up against the case, and then we have each one of the volume pots, right? Has to be grounded, and we'll bend the lug up against the case, right, like so. And on this one, right, so it's a little bit of an awkward angle to get at this guy over here without getting my head in the camera, but there we go. And then we're going to solder them in place to the case, and that's how these are going to be grounded, right? Then we're going to be putting the bus wire on that afterwards, right? Which will be the sort of the ground plane for the whole amplifier. But before we do that, we need to sort of get some of the work done around the potentiometers. That would be more difficult to do once the bus wire is in place, right? So we'll start first with the master volume, wiring these up to the potentiometers, right? So I'm going to kind of go over them, the pots like this. See, I'm kind of weaving them. So down, up, down, up, down, and come up from behind into the treble control, right? Oh wait, this is the treble control. Duh. Yeah, I think that is good right there. So we're going to trim a little bit more off of it, right? And then we'll strip some lead once again. All right, so the Jose Master is basically two masters in one, in a sense. One sort of like a traditional pre-phase inverter master volumes that everybody's fairly familiar with, I suppose, where you sort of insert a potentiometer between the output of the treble, right? Where it would normally connect to the phase inverter, you would insert one potentiometer, right? So one of the decks of the ganged potentiometer. This is giving me a little bit of agita here. is the traditional master volume. The second gang of pots is actually the works between the slope resistor, or rather between the cathode and the slope resistor, right, in the treble pot. So it works between the tube and the tone and the actual tone controls, the capacitors and all that good stuff. So it's kind of acts in both ways, and that creates a little bit of a different sound that Jose believed was sort of more accurately sounded like a cranked amplifier versus just the traditional master volume alone, right? Okay, so we got that one done. Now we're going to go ahead and take the output, right, side of the master, and we're going to weave it around, and that's going to go to the treble pot. So no problem there. We're basically going to leave this here. So we wound them counter one another, and that keeps them in place up against the chassis where they're not likely to pick up any noise, right? So let's just grab the board real quick and make sure that we've got enough lead, right, for, that's where we want to end up, right? So that's plenty to get over to there. It's actually more than plenty. So we'll leave that. Okay. The next thing to do would be to all that work is done. So now let's wire up the bass control, the middle control, and the treble control. You can take some wire, right, and we're gonna go. Well, the way I kind of like to do it is like this, right? Okay, so we'll go through here, right, and right through here. So we got from here to here. There we go. And I'm going to leave this side unsoldered because that's where another wire is going to enter from the tone stack from one of the 0.02 capacitors, right? And then these two, middle lug on the base, on the middle control doesn't get anything. So I'm going to bend this one up. I'm going to bend this one up, and this lug on the base control gets nothing either. And then we're going to run a lead in there. All right, so I'll take a little bit off, send it through, to measure it out. Right around there is good. There we go. And that could just stay like that. And I like this look. It's a little bit neater, I guess, than the way Marshall did it, which they just kind of looped the wires. I think this is like, I talked about Mike Soldano and how he was very, I think he formed a lot of my opinions on how to do stuff just by looking at his amplifiers and how they were built. And that's kind of like how Mike would do it. So if it's good enough for Mikey, if Mikey likes it, I like it. All right, there we go. Just straightening that up a little bit. Here we need to put a capacitor, right? 4700 puff capacitor. So I'm gonna go grab one out of my stash here. Right? So all these things have you know, what kind of capacitor do you like? Blah blah blah. Well, micas are good, ceramics are good, and in ceramics I generally go for the temperature coefficient of the Y5P type. I just think that they sound good. So I'm just going to wind this around a little bit, and I'm going to give it a little bit of solder. Just enough to hold it in place, but not enough to prevent a wire from going through later. Right, just a little bit, just so I can keep it in place. Right, there we go. So that's like that. Right, that looks good. Now we have to do the presence control. Right, because we have that on the back. So let's go this, look at it from this way. Turn this one in. Turn this one in. Going to insert, we're using a 0.68, right? So hang on. Just going to get that in position. There we go. And this is a little solder job there. Put those around. This is a WEMA capacitor. I kind of like the way WEMAs sound as well, although opinions may vary. We need to put a 5K resistor there, so I have to find one. Somewhere around here I have a 5K. Probably should have pulled that out earlier. 4K7. Let's see where it is. This must be exciting. Watching me look for a resistor. Alright, we're going to hold on for a second whilst I find the 4K resistors. Hang on a minute. Okay, found the 4K7. Took a little longer than expected because I found the peanuts before I found the 4K7 resistor. I like peanuts. Okay, so the 4K7 sort of goes on the potentiometer, right? And to ground. And this is the present circuit that was used, you know, say around the time 68, around there, it started to come into fashion in the Marshall universe. The purpose of this circuit was to eliminate basically the scratchy sounds that were present on the earlier present circuits, which used a 5K pot. And it's sort of the reason why it was scratchy, right, is when you have when you vary your DC signal, right, like you would if on a potentiometer like this, that's what creates sort of a audio signal, right? You're doing it with a potentiometer as opposed to like the grid of a tube, but it's still varying things, and it makes a as the voltage goes up and down because there's voltage on the potentiometer itself, and when you vary it, it creates an impulse that the amplifier will perceive as a sound, right? So the way around it would be to create a constant ground source for it that will eliminate sort of the variable nature of the sound, the variable voltage. So that sort of is why these went they went to this kind of a circuit, I think, because they didn't want people complaining or calling them up and asking them that they think their amplifier is broken or was put together wrong, because it has like this scratchy sound whenever I use the potentiometers, right? Whenever I touch the presence control. All right, so that's pretty good. Let's keep going. Let's see what we have to do next. This actually goes on to the underneath the board to the cathode follower, so I'm just going to jam it through the center hole of this tube socket to keep it in place. Alright, let's see what else we can do real quick. This is, oh, we have to solder the other side of the 0.68 capacitor onto the pot body so it's grounded. There we go. Okay, that's good. That's in place. That looks good. Alright, so what can we do next? We can do some of the jacks, right? So on the Jose, let me get 3 jacks going. On the Jose, you have 3 inputs that are different from one another, right? So the way the jacks are wired is different than on a normal plexi, where you would have a high and low input for each one of the channels. On a Jose mod, the 3-way, you have 3 different inputs. One input being the highest gain, which includes the gain stage, the added gain stage. There's another input being the normal channel, right, which would be like the bass channel on a plexi, right, corresponding to this volume pot. And then it also allows you to access the stock plexi bright input without the boost on it, right? So all of these are dedicated inputs separate from one another. So each one of these is going to require its own referencing resistor, right? Impedance reference resistor, which is a 1 meg, right? That's what Marshall like to use. So we're going to make each one of these sort of its own deal, right? So the way you do it kind of is, or the way I like to do it, is you come over like so, bend your lead around, and then this guy, this lead right here, goes up to here, right? So that way you're allowing it to shunt to ground when nothing is plugged into it. And that way that grid wire doesn't make all kinds of crazy noises when there's nothing plugged into it. So let's go ahead and solder it. Doing it out of frame. Let me move this over a little bit so you can see it more in the jack area. Okay. So each one of these is going to have its own separate path to ground as well. So fold that underneath and clip it. There we go. So that's one. All right, we'll put that there. Then we're going to repeat that 2 more times. There we go. Why did I do that? I don't know, just force a habit. Whenever I touch one of these things, I start to unscrew it. I don't know why. All right, continue. Alright, so we have all these jacks pretty much ready to go. Yep. Okay. One of them is going to need a shield. It is going to travel over to here. The other two go on the board, so they're not going to be shielded. So, there you have that. Now we're going to need to run a little bit of a ground wire there for each one of these. Let me see what we got left for wire. I think we're out of black wire right now, right? Which is kind of goofy. So we're going to use some of this green here. G for ground. So you ground at the case side, right, of the jack, right, the sleeve, as it's called. So you basically have your reference resistor to set the impedance with the input side, the ground side, and 1 meg. So that's your reference there. So I'm going to go ahead and then screw this guy in. So this one here, I believe, should be the normal, or rather the bright channels input. All right. So we're going to come over, and it's going to get grounded on the bus wire around here. So we'll cut about this much, and we'll do our second one, and we'll install the bus wire in a second. Once we get this all finished up, and then we could probably take a break and start another new video. Break these out into chunks so that they're not too long. We'll have to see how many people actually want to watch the whole thing. Okay. I'm going to run this behind everything. There we go. And it'll go basically to the same exact point. So somewhere right around here we can cut it. And then the final jack. Run the lead under everything. Get over in there. Okay, that looks good. Cut it right there. All right, so those are our jacks, and we have our grounds done. So I'll move these aside, right? And now we're going to run a bus wire across the cases, right? Oh wait, before we do that, we have not over here. Let me move the chassis again. We have to ground the Jose Master, right, at the case. So we're going to cut it right there, right? Because this is the lead from the from the left-hand lug. Both lugs on that dual-ganged potentiometer. So I'm going to basically solder them to the case of the pot. Solder this to the case of the pot here. So I can give myself a little bit of solder right there. And now solder it down. There we go. Then I'll tuck this to the side. That looks really good. So let's go ahead now and run our bus wire, right, for all of the above goodies. So let me get that. So here we have some bus wire, a little length of it. Trying to straighten it out a little bit here. All right. Okay. Let us begin bussing the wire. So I'm going to put one lead. We'll start right here. All right, and I'll tin this tip a little bit. Let me get it out of the way of those wires so I don't accidentally burn anything. Okay. Ground it to the case there. There we go. It begins. Now I'm going to fold it in, right? So it lays up against this potentiometer. And I will put a nice dab of solder there. And then I will release. It still needs to, there we go. And I'm using, you can use whatever, because I wouldn't recommend holding it with your finger. I mean, you can do it. I mean, you'll end up with thumbs that look like mine that are all burned up. Alright, so we're going to go down to this mid pot now. Alright, once again, and we're going to heat the case and the wires simultaneously. Right? Oop, bent it a little bit. There we go. Good. go here to the treble. Let me just touch this joint up a little bit more. Okay. Now we've got the final. So I snipped it off right there, and now I'll go ahead and looks good. Do a little bit of touch up. That looks good. 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 Excellent. Here we go. All right, so we have our bus wire on. So this is the ground plane for this amplifier, and all the board grounds will be grounded right there onto this little bit of bus wire that's hanging between the two potentiometers. So you kind of strip your wire and wrap it around there, solder. Good ground point, right? Let's see what we got going on. You know what? I think we're probably at half an hour plus. So I think this is a good place to stop for now. We've got a lot of the good stuff done. Closing in on it. So when we come back next, we'll probably run a little bit of shielded cable. Get some of that ready. We'll put in our cathode plate resistor in here, or rather our cathode and plate assembly here. For our cathode follower, put the 100K in there, and then we can start to drop the board in. All right, so I think that's good for today. So once again, I thank you for watching, and maybe you picked up something interesting. Maybe you just finished your sandwich. I hope it was good. All right, so I'll speak to you later.